Today we are here with Dr. John Willinsky, Khosla Family Professor of Education at Stanford University and Professor of Publishing Studies at Simon Fraser University, where he directs the Public Knowledge Project. Dr. John Willinsky, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's jump right in. Recently, dramatic shifts have been occurring in scholarly communication. Could you please provide an overview for us?
Well, I think the digital revolution is affecting everyone, and certainly it's affecting book publishing, magazines, newspapers, and scholarly communication, and by which I mean journals and scholarly books. I think the biggest change is that all of the scholarly journals have gone online and available electronically. And most of the books, well, it's starting to happen with books, but largely the journals. And the part that I'm interested in and involved in is whether we can make those journals and the research articles that are available freely available, so that readers all over the world, scholars, members of the public, can have access to this knowledge. And that we think about financing it and we think about organizing it differently, so that our goal is that we have a greater public, a wider use and uptake, and the value of everyone's research will be realized more widely if more people have access to it.
Okay, your notion of a knowledge-based society challenges how some perceive knowledge and intellectual property. Could you introduce your perspective to those who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, some people think that intellectual property, by that we mean copyright and patents and things like that, but largely copyright is part of the problem. And I don't think so. I think copyright is there to protect the public and to protect the authors. And that's why copyright runs for a limited period of time. Right now, 70 years after the death of the author, so it's not so limited. But my perspective is that the intellectual property that the universities produce is a different sort of intellectual property than we associate with movies, with popular singers, with novels. And my thinking is that at the university we are either publicly paid for our research in public institutions, or in my case a private institution that is tax exempt. We receive public research money, funding from federal agencies, for example, and also from nonprofits, from philanthropic organizations. So there's a different economy at work. We don't live off the proceeds from our research. In fact, we're not paid for our publications. And it's a different order. So my thinking about intellectual property is that we need to think about the work of the university as producing intellectual property of value that everyone has a right to. Still has to be paid for in terms of the expense of publishing, but we don't need to protect it, and we don't need to close off other people's use of it in the same way that, of course, bands like Metallica, Hollywood, other organizations very much need to protect their intellectual property in order to continue to produce it. Ours is of a different order.
Can you tell us how the Public Knowledge Project is responding to some of the challenges in scholarly communication?
The Public Knowledge Project is just a group of researchers, librarians, developers, community resource people. And what we do, based largely at Simon Fraser University in Canada and here at Stanford, United States, is we try to help people share the research, the peer-reviewed journal research. And we do that in a small way by building publishing platforms on which journals can be published, and which supports the peer review and submission and editing process. And that software we have developed on an open source principle, which means that you don't have to pay for the software, which means that lots of people contribute to the development of that software, and which means that it's always responding to the community in terms of that development. So we've developed open source software for publishing journals. It's called Open Journal Systems. For conferences, Open Conference Systems. And most recently for book, called Open Monograph Press. And our response then has been to build tools that help people begin to share their knowledge more freely. At the same time, as a group, we engage in research. We look at the impact of open access. Who's looking at this research? It's freely available. What are they doing with it? How are they using it? Is it showing up in Wikipedia? So those kinds of questions. I'm doing some work now in the history of this idea of open and freely available knowledge. So the project is a combination, the public knowledge project is a combination of a very practical building resources and a research outfit.
Can you share with us the profile of the PKP School?
PKP School is part of this initiative to help people take up new tools, to make them independent, and to help more people participate on a global basis, so that all of the research isn't coming from, as it were, the north, or however you want to think about it. And so the PKP School was developed to help people use our tools. We decided it wasn't enough to give away the tools, you have to help people use them. So the school is designed to help all of the different participants in the journal publishing process. By that I mean the editor, the journal manager, the reviewers, the authors. And the school is divided up by those roles. So you can, it's online, available, it's free. You can drop in to learn about a particular role. Now, it's all based on the Public Knowledge Project software, but we are also developing courses for general principles of editing. What does it mean ethically to edit a journal? What does it mean in terms of organization? How do I help my journal get discovered and found? So the school is a way of supporting more people participating in the sharing of peer-reviewed research.